merciful, can let go of offenses, no problem, when you can see life non-dually. When you read everything in terms of us and them, frankly, you cannot get very far in the spiritual life at all. Let me read another Mary Oliver poem, and this one is called Mindful. Every day I see or I hear something that more or less kills me with delight, that leaves me like a needle in the haystack of light. This is what I was born for, to look, to listen, to lose myself inside this soft world, to instruct myself over and over again in joy and acclamation. Nor am I talking about the exceptional, the fearful, the dreadful, or the very extravagant. I am talking of the ordinary, the common, the very drab, the daily presentations. O good scholar, I say to myself, how can you help but grow wise with such teachings as these? The untrimmable light of the world, the oceans shine, the prayers that are made out of grass. This is from her book, Why I Wake Early. It's going to be important, brothers and sisters, if we're going to not just bear fruit for the world, but fruit that will last, as Jesus prays for, that we find a way of taking in our experiences in a way that we experience our experiences. Most people don't. Do you know that? They don't. That's why their experiences don't change them. They don't transform them. And why we tend to need more and more experiences, which we call entertainment or diversionary tactics or distraction. We have a culture, and you do too, largely based on entertaining people so they don't have to feel what is right beneath the surface. Probably the line I'm most quoted on in our country, I've said for years that if you do not transform your pain, you will always transmit it. And healthy religion is about what you do with your pain, because you will have pain. That's why we hung the cross at the center of our religion as our logo and our symbol and our image of transformation. It's all about what you do with your pain. Even the Buddha says life is suffering. And the cross is saying the same thing. Jesus says to the rich man who tries to protect himself from that cycle of pain and rebirth, that it's harder for him to know what he's talking about than a camel to pass through the eye of a needle. That's basically their definition of a rich man. Someone who shields himself or herself from the cycle of down and letting God renew, restore, resurrect, transform. Those are the people who have something to say. Until you've gone through that cycle at least once, you have nothing to say spiritually. Nothing. It'll all just be words. It'll be ideology. It'll be dogmas and doctrines and orthodoxies, which might even be orthodox, but they don't change anybody because they haven't changed you yet. So I talked about moving from belief-based Christianity to practice-based. What we've had up to now, brothers and sisters, is largely belonging systems. My belonging system is better than your belonging system. We Methodists believe. We Lutherans maintain. So because we didn't have a lot of inner authority or inner experience, we transferred all of that authority to our group. That my group knows God, you see. My group is transformed. That ain't going to work anymore, I don't think. That's why in Thomas Merton's very last talk, which was in Bangkok, by the way, when he was electrocuted there in 1968, the very last talk, it's on video, he says, brothers, in a certain sense, we're all on our own. And what he meant by that was not individualism, but that we're going to have to find a path of transformation that really gives you new eyes, new hearts, not just new emotions, but where you see, as Mary Oliver puts it, the prayers that are made out of grass. That everything becomes a prayer when you see properly and truthfully. When you see the divine and the human coexisting. When you see the spiritual and the material coinciding in the same place. That's the new seeing. And I warn you about it. First of all, you've got to see it in yourself. That you are simultaneously, well, to quote Luther, simul justus et peccator, simultaneously sinner and saint. That you are, as I said, son of God and daughter of heaven at the same time. I warn you about it because when you see that in yourself, all evidence to the contrary, it wants to tell you it's not true, you'll have to grant everybody else the same concession, right? That she or he has also still got some limitations, some things you don't like so much. But you know what? God loved you in your unworthiness. So what falls apart is what I keep calling this worthiness contest. Looking at everybody else in terms of their worthiness. Now, what every spiritual teacher worth his or her salt says, and I haven't found an exception yet, every great spiritual teacher will always say in some form or another, do not judge. All say it. Now, sometimes I think most religion is like a PhD in judgments. You know, it's like, my God, do we get good at making judgments. And I don't want to be so naive as to tell you that there isn't an appropriate place for appropriate judgments. I just talked to you about critical thinking. But here's the point. Why spiritual teachers and why the contemplative mind is not a judgmental mind. That first of all, what you do is you receive the person, the event, the moment, the situation as it is. Without an announcement. Go ahead.
I'm so sorry.
All right, go ahead.
It's so unimportant compared to this. But some of our tradesmen's factory neighbours are blocked by two cars.
Oh, sure.
YWN789 and WBQ479. We need to move them straight away, folks. Two of our neighbours are...
That's right, we're being good neighbors by doing...
Sorry,
you can
Richard.
interrupt me anytime, no problem. That we've got to see the moment without labeling it, without categorizing it up and down, in or out, saved or unsaved, Catholic or Protestant, Aussie or American, black or white, gay or straight. Now, be honest, how many of you can do that, right? Nobody that I know, unless you're contemplative. When you learn to see truthfully, and you honor the divine image in yourself, and then you can see it equally in everybody else, that becomes gradually the overriding truth, right? And all the other things are accidents. All the color of the skin, the group they belong to, the titles they wear, are all what's going to die when you die. That's the accidents. It's not the essence. So contemplative seeing, it does not divide the field of the moment. Now listen closely, all right? You accept it as it is. You don't need to eliminate the mysterious part, the part I do not yet understand, the part I do not agree with, the problematic part, the negative part. You don't divide the field. It is what it is. Do you understand? Now, I'm going to warn you, that's major surgery. It's like taking the software that you've all been trained in, because we all have, we've been educated. Education, and I want to say it's good. I couldn't talk to you now if I wasn't educated. But it is high-level training in dualistic thinking, all right? It trains you in words and concepts and ideas. Words are always dualistic. The only way short makes sense is in relationship to tall, You understand? That's what the mind is, a binary system. It knows everything in comparison to something else. If words are always dualistic, that's why they help us clarify and distinguish. Experience is always, take my word for it, try to trust me, is always non-dual. Always. It is what it is, and if you even your beloved little boyfriend that you think is the cutest thing in the world, you just worship him, you adore him. But if you're perfectly honest, he's got 2 or 3 things that you'd like to change. Do you understand? There's no exceptions to that. No exceptions. There's nothing on this earth that is God, is what I'm saying. Everything on this earth is a mixture of darkness and light. Even the fact that you can see me now and I can see you, we could have a photographer or an optics technician come in and prove that the reason we can see is because this room is filled with shadows, varying degrees of darkness and light. All right? If this room were total light, we would be blinded. If this room were total darkness, we could not see, obviously. Huh? We live in what C.S. Lewis rightly called the shadowlands, right? And that is the only world available to humans, right? The contemplative mind surrenders to that. And if I can be presumptuous, brothers and sisters, this I'm offering you, not that some of you don't already have it, the pearl of great price. This is the key to happiness. Because you're never going to be happy. Never. If you go through life deciding what you like and what you don't like. And what you agree with and what you don't agree with. You're constantly fighting mental wars. And by the time you get my age, you're just, nasty and cantankerous and argumentative and not much fun to be around, which is true of a lot of people by the second half of life. If you've practiced your dualistic judgmental mind for 30 or 40 years, for most people it's the only way you know how to think. And you call it thinking. We'd call it stinking thinking. It's not very good thinking at all. When Eckhart Tolle wrote his book on the power of now, he lives up in Vancouver, and I sent him a letter and I said, gosh, you are recovering the ancient contemplative tradition. While everybody was calling him New Age and pagan and where did this come from? Because they don't know the contemplative tradition. And anyway, perhaps if you read the book, you remember he said 83% of human thought is repetitive and useless. So I told him, I said, I just love your book, but I disagree with you on one thing. I said, I think it's 93%. Well, he must agree with me. His latest book, he says 98%. Yeah, he does. It's true. I mean, I don't want to offend this brilliant and august group here, but watch your mind. It's just the most, we call it the monkey mind, just jumping around, thinking ridiculous, silly nothings about nothing. And you think this mind is going to get you anywhere? That this self-referential mind, I think, I want, I believe, I know, I need, you hear what's in all that I. There's way too much I, as if you're the reference point for anything. One time I was in a plane, and there were, no offense to my sisters here, but there were 3 teenage girls behind me. It can really be torture sitting in front of 3 teenage girls for 3 hours. And the entire trip across America was I like, I want, I hate, I love, I like, I hate, I cannot stand. And I didn't do this, thank God. But there was a part of me, arrogant part of me, wanted to stand up, turn around and says, no one cares what you like. Now that wouldn't have worked and it wouldn't have been nice at all. But that's what a true spiritual master says. Why would the world care? Why should you care what you like? If you keep defining yourself in terms of what you like, the universe is going to say back to you, it doesn't matter. This is what is. And most of it is not anything you like. So you're just setting yourself up to be miserable by defining the world. I like, I don't like, I hate, I love. It just is what it is. Everything is what it is. That's why teacher said, do not judge. Do you understand? Now, once you can accept the moment in the undivided field, not eliminating the problematic, the mysterious, that which I do not yet understand. You let it come toward you. And your ego and agenda and fear and anger are out of the way. Now that takes years to begin to achieve that. Don't think that happens quickly. But when it does, to some degree, then 3 hours later, 3 days later, when you know that you've gotten yourself out of the way, there might be very appropriate judgments to make. Do you understand? What Cynthia said was very cruel to the other people in the circle. I think, now that I'm calm about it, now that I know I can respect Cynthia, I think when just one-on-one, it's time for me to go and say, Cynthia, you can't talk that way to people. You know what I'm just using an example. So there's a place for appropriate judgments. But the point why spiritual teachers said don't do it is it can't be the first lens. Do you understand? It can't be the first thing you see. And if you'd be honest, on almost all of us, before conversion, it is the first thing you see. What you don't like, what you don't agree with, what threatens you, what's mysterious to you, you eliminate, and all that gets in by the time you're middle age or even 20, all that gets in, most people, this is what we would call ignorance, is what you already agree with. Do you understand? Yeah. That's why people stop growing very early. What I already agree with gets in. And well, you couldn't be very wise by the time you're 19. But if you close down already at that point, and what your church has told you, and your culture has told you, and your parents have told you, not that your parents are wrong, your church is wrong, but usually it has a lot of cultural baggage, right? Usually it has a lot of prejudice, fear, anger tied to it. That's just the case. And when you can stand back, let it be what it is, then you can see things as they are. Now I'm going to read the poem again, and we'll end on this. Every day, I see or I hear something that more or less kills me with delight, that leaves me like a needle in the haystack of light. It is what I was born for, to look, to listen, to lose myself inside this soft world, to instruct myself over and over in joy and acclamation. Nor am I talking about the exceptional, the fearful, the dreadful, the very extravagant, but I am talking of the ordinary, the common, the very drab, the daily presentations. O good scholar, I say to myself, how can you help but grow wise with such teachings as these? The untrimmable light of the world, the ocean's shine, the prayers that are made out of grass. Now, the only thing I would add in this particular poem, she does seem to be allowing the beautiful to shine through the ordinary. And that's a big enough breakthrough. But what we've learned, what you've certainly learned, is that this seeing doesn't just let the beautiful in. It lets the painful in, right? It lets the sad in, the disappointing. And maybe that's why people don't want to be contemplative. Because once you do not divide the field, and you let the moment be what it will be, both things get in. One spiritual director told me that's why you have two eyes. He says one is crying for joy and one is crying for sadness. Just a way of saying that. That's holistic seeing. The world gives you much more happiness. At my age, it takes me very little to make me content and happy. But I almost want to shut down that open field, because those same eyes that see the prayers made out of grass also see maybe that we're destroying the grass. Do you understand? And it's like you got to see both of them. Now that's non-dual thinking. And that's what we're going to keep talking about as we stay together. So thank you, and we'll move from there. Good.